I'm Joe with Engravery.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to address wedding invitations. First of all, you need to go to our website at www.engravery.com, and over on the left side of the panel here you click on wedding invitations, and then on that page you scroll all the way to the bottom to the Wedding Help Center and click on Addressing Invitations, and then our page on how to address envelopes comes up. And feel free to print this page for future reference. Now when you address envelopes, you address both the inner and outer envelope a little bit differently. For example, for husband and wife, on the inner envelope you will put Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but on the outer envelope you use the first name. In this example you would use Mr. and Mrs. John Smith, and then on the outer envelope you'd put the address, city, state, and zip code as well. If you have husband and wife and children under 16 years old that you're inviting, on the inner envelope you put Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and then below that you would put the children's name in order of age. But on the outer envelope you would simply put Mr. and Mrs. John Jones. If you have a couple that's married but the wife has kept a maiden name, on the inner envelope you'd put Miss Jones on top, and then below that you put Mr. Smith. Then on the outer envelope, again, you use first names, Ms. Mary Jones, and then underneath that, Mr. John Smith. If you have a single woman, it's simply Miss Jones on the inner envelope and Miss Mary Jones on the outer envelope. And if you would like that single woman to invite a guest, you'd put Miss Jones and guest on the inner envelope, but on the outer envelope, you would only put Miss Mary Jones. If you have a single man, again, it's very similar. You put Mr. Smith on the inner envelope, and on the outer envelope, you put Mr. John Smith. And again, if you'd like to have that single man invite a guest, you would put Mr. Smith and guest on the inner envelope, but on the outer envelope you just put Mr. John Smith. If you're inviting a widow, on the inner envelope you'd put Mrs. Johnson, but on the outer envelope you'd put Mrs. William Johnson. For an engaged couple you put Mr. White, and then underneath his name and Miss Murphy, and then on the outer envelope you just simply put Mr. James White. Now if you have two sisters over the age of 16 but they still live at home, you put the Mrs. Brown, and then on the outer envelope you put the Mrs. Mary and Laura Brown. And similarly, if you have two brothers over the 16 but they're living at home, you'd put the Messrs. Jones. Messrs. is plural for Mr. And then on the outer envelope you'd put the Messrs. William and Joseph Jones. So you include their first names on the outer envelope. And then finally, if you have an unmarried couple that you're inviting but they live together, you'd put her name, Miss Jones, and underneath that put his name, Mr. Brown. And then on the outer envelope you put Miss Susan Jones, and then underneath her name you put Mr. Joseph Brown. Again, our website is www.engravery.com, and I hope this video was helpful.